Hey everyone, I hope you're having a good day. I wanted to take a little bit of time to kind of break down this topic or phrase of you have to feel it to heal it. I think that comes up quite a bit in the healing world or therapeutic spaces or personal development spaces where you're trying to figure things out and move through something to either get some clarity or to let it go or to figure out like what to do next. And that's a lot of my work with clients, is helping them find that level of clarity in their experience. So they might come to a conversation with me feeling really overwhelmed and not exactly know how they feel about something. They just know they're having like a multitude of feelings. They might feel angry about something that somebody has said to them, or upset, or betrayed, or hurt, or sad. Like they have enough of the emotional language, to say like, okay, I'm having all these feelings, but they kind of don't have the clarity to know like, well, what am I supposed to do with it? And part of getting that clarity is starting to recognize like, well, what are my full feelings about it? What am I maybe taking on from somebody else? What am I assuming? How can I kind of come to a place of feeling a little bit more grounded so that I actually know like what I want to do with this feeling. And that's where like processing our feelings comes in, and that's where like the whole idea of like you have to feel it to heal it, I think, comes into that conversation. And while sometimes we can think about the feel it to heal it as in, okay, what am I feeling? Like I'm feeling angry and sad or hurt or betrayed, or it's like, not that betrayal is an actual emotion, but that feeling of like feeling betrayed can certainly bring up a lot of emotion. Some people feel guilt, some people feel shame. It's like we can kind of unpack all of these things, but then sometimes you're still just left with like a pile of these feelings. I have personally certainly experienced situations where someone has said or done something, and I can be angry about what they've said, but I can also feel a lot of sadness about what they've said because maybe I feel hurt or misunderstood, so we can have like multiple feelings, right, after a situation and or after an experience, and we can still continue to intellectualize that. And this is where I'm talking to the people who, the clients I serve are very smart, and they are analytical, and they can kind of parse out some of these feelings. And sometimes they can even recognize that, oh yeah, I know that I tend to get really triggered when I feel like somebody's criticizing me. Yes, one, because it's annoying to be criticized if it's not like warranted or valid or said in a harsh way. But maybe they're like, well, I know that when I was younger, this happened to me all the time. I was criticized all the time, so I'm like very particularly sensitive about it. And so I know that now in my relationship, if that happens, I am extra sensitive about it. Not to say it's not valid, that you would be upset about that and have to say something, but sometimes the perception could be a little bit off because they're sort of primed to listen to comments or things like as potentially perceiving them as criticism because that's been their experience in the past. So even as I'm saying this, you might think like, oh, what might that be for me? What am I a little bit extra sensitive around? Like, does that have anything to do with like maybe an early experience that I have that I haven't like fully gone through or processed or worked out in some way? And so because I work with people who are very smart and can intellectualize and can even like trace back their experience to some of these early experiences. And they might have even accepted some of those early experiences. Like we've all had experiences where we've been with parents or caregivers or teachers or other people who have said and done things that maybe we have like really taken to heart and internalized. And as adults, like, and having done some level of personal work, we can recognize like, oh, I can see how that has impacted me, and I see how that's affecting my current relationship. And yet even when it happens in real time, like I still feel like I just got punched in the stomach, or I still feel like my throat closed up a little bit, and or I feel stuck around what to say, or I still feel really emotional when that happens, because even though I understand it, my body, my physiology hasn't really moved through the processing around it. And so when I use the term like feel it to heal it, it's not exactly about the emotions or the labels that we can give different emotions. It's really about the sensations as feelings. And so those sensations are like the sensation of feeling like you're punched in the gut, or your throat is closing, or your heart is beating rapidly, or you have like a knot in your stomach because there's this sense of anxiety. And so when we can slow ourselves down enough to recognize that we are being like triggered or activated in a certain way, and then we build up the skills and the tools to be able to sit with some of those very, very uncomfortable feelings or sensations, then we have this opportunity to really shift how that shows up in our body. And that is really the crux of somatic work, and the way that I practice it. That is an umbrella term. It includes many things. When I'm working with clients, it is kind of like we're right now on video, and walking them through more guided ways to tune in and reconnect with themselves. I love this work so much because it feels so empowering. It's not really about, telling somebody something or telling them how they feel, or it's so much about like holding this level of space, but also guiding people with like very gentle words and just the right way to drop in. And so it really allows them to get very connected to themselves, which I think also, as a whole separate conversation, is one of the reasons that we can feel so overwhelmed and disempowered, and like our feelings and thoughts and emotions can feel like they're flying all around because we're not like connected to that internal part of ourselves that allows us to feel grounded. And so when you do this work over and over again, and especially when you have had these early experiences that your brain is smart enough to intellectualize, I honestly feel like having another person is really who can reflect some of that back to you and kind of just like help you come back to your body, when it's so much easier to stay in your brain because it feels a lot safer to intellectualize some of these things than it feels to sit with the massive discomfort that's sitting in your body, because that discomfort will like take you back to that like origin story, right? Like the fear or the anxiety or whatever it is. You don't have to remember the experience or talk about the experience, but when you are sitting with the discomfort of that experience in your body, it's really easy for our kind of bodies to feel like they're being hijacked and like taken back to that time. So in particular, having somebody who's experienced with working with trauma and like sitting with somebody in that space where they might be taken to a previous or past experience, and like helping them stay grounded while they sit with the feelings, can be incredibly powerful. And I have absolutely seen that as clients learn these skills and they feel more and more grounded themselves, they will do this work on their own. So if we have sessions, and there's time certainly in between them, they might come to me in the next session and say like, this is my experience and this is like how I worked with it, and then we can take it even further, right? So it is a capacity and a skill that grows over time, which I also love about this work, because you're really building like a level of resilience that I think is so powerful. And that's also the reason that I am again going to be offering single sessions or 3-session packages, because if you've been following my work, or listening to some of this, and you feel like this would be really beneficial for you, but you were just not in a space to say like, yes, I can commit for 4 months, or I need like this level of support, I really wanted to make it a little bit more manageable and accessible, because I have been doing this work virtually for a couple of years now, and previously I was like working with people in person for, you know, about a decade or so. And I can see the shifts and the power that people are able to like reclaim in this work, because they're willing to work with their body and their physiology and some of those fears like in a different way. And I also think this work can be very vague and esoteric, and I just like really want to speak to that, because you might listen, you might nod along to some things, you might wonder like, I don't really know what she's saying, or I don't really understand how that works. And fair enough, right? Because why would you know that if you've never experienced it? And so adding these options in of just being able to book like one session when you're bringing a particular issue or challenge that you're experiencing, I'm really hoping that that will just allow you to experience it and really see the benefits or feel the benefits, and see how that level of ability to sit with what's going on for you can have like massive and relatively quick shifts in your clarity around a situation, so that you can actually then say or do the thing that you want to do. I think sometimes we feel so weighed down by things in our lives because they're like rolling around in our minds for weeks, months, years, but we're never in a place where we feel like solid and grounded enough to like take the next step or do something with it. So let me know if that is of interest to you. I will also, wherever you're watching this video, have various links that you can click on and just see where you can book a single session. If you still have any questions about it, you can message me. There's also an option to book like a 15-minute call just to ask any questions, and get a little clarity around, you know, any thoughts or questions you have. I'm very open to that. I think this work is gaining a lot of ground, but it's also still like people don't get it, and and I don't expect people to understand it. I've been in this world for 20 years in various capacities, so I just really want to make it a little more open and a little more accessible, and I hope that you will join me for the ride, especially if you feel like you do have a tendency to intellectualize what's going on for you, and you can make a lot of those connections between present and past, but you're still feeling like stuck in the activation or the feeling triggered, and you're struggling in your relationships as a result. So I would love to support you. It is the work I love to do and my specialty. So yeah, be in touch, and I will talk to y'all soon.